Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. The phone rang just as I was finishing up my second cup of coffee. I glanced at the screen, didn't recognize the number, and figured it was probably some telemarketer. I was about to let it go to voicemail when I saw the area code. Something about it made me hesitate. Hello? Is this protagonist? A woman's voice asked, sharp but professional. Yeah, speaking. Who's this? This is Katie Waller with Silver Oak Events. I'm calling about the upcoming family event. I stiffened. Okay. I'm sorry to inform you that you've been excluded from the guest list. She continued, her voice as polite as a form letter. The decision was made by the family. They felt it would be best not to have you involved, given the circumstances. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The weight of it hit me, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some scheduling error. They had made a decision. A deliberate one. I see, I said, keeping my voice even. Thank you for letting me know. There was a brief silence on the other end. I know this might be difficult for you, she added, her tone softening just a touch. But I wanted to make sure you had all the details. Appreciate it, I said, though I didn't feel any gratitude. I hung up, the phone heavy in my hand. For years, I'd been dismissed, overlooked. My family had made a habit of it. My older sister, the golden child, always the first in line for praise and accolades. I was the quiet one, the one who blended into the background, never quite fitting into the neat little box they wanted me in. Always in the shadow. But it wasn't just about being left out of some family event. No, it was the realization that they never bothered to ask what I'd been doing, how I'd been doing. They didn't know. They never would. But I knew. I'd built something real. And if they couldn't see it, that was their problem, not mine. I took a breath, steadying myself. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to make a scene. I'd handle this with the quiet strength that had gotten me this far. I'd let them have their event, their little world of perfection. But from now on, things were going to change. I wasn't invisible anymore. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers gripping the edge of the desk. My mind wandered to those countless moments when I was still just her, the afterthought. Emma, my sister, was always the one who mattered. She was the perfect daughter, the one they cheered for at every stage. She'd had her whole life laid out for her like a red carpet, graduating top of her class, marrying the perfect guy, landing a high-paying job with a company that had a name you could drop at dinner parties. My parents praised her, constantly reminding me of how she was everything they wanted. And me? I was just the one who stayed in the background, working quietly, unnoticed. I used to think it was just the way things were, the way things had to be. I'd play the role I was assigned, the humble one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need the spotlight. But the more I did, the more they treated me like I wasn't even there. I saw the way they'd look at me, always in comparison to Emma, like I was lesser just because I wasn't living the life they had mapped out for me. What they didn't understand was that I had my own way. I wasn't chasing a traditional career. I wasn't trying to build a life they could parade around as perfect. I had my own path, my own vision. Real estate wasn't the flashiest profession, but I made it work. I built something from nothing, a quiet empire that didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't need to flaunt it, but I also didn't need their validation. I'd always been the steady one, the one who got things done without complaint. Emma had always been the one to grab all the attention, no matter what. It used to sting, but I learned not to show it. I stayed focused on what I could control. I used to tell myself that I was just biding my time, that it would pay off in the end. But now, I wasn't so sure. What had I been doing all these years, working and building, if no one cared? I thought about Emma's career. She was an attorney, straight-laced, impressive, always climbing that corporate ladder. It was obvious how much she was praised for it. My parents bragged about her constantly, her accolades, her clean, straightforward life. But the truth was, I never felt the need for any of that. I never needed the validation that Emma seemed to thrive on. Meanwhile, I spent years flying under the radar. I got into real estate by chance. What started as a side hustle, a few properties here and there, turned into something bigger. I didn't just buy and sell properties. I turned them into profitable investments, ones that would grow, compound over time. It was all by design, methodical, calculated. But no one ever asked about my work. They never asked what I'd accomplished. It wasn't exciting enough. It wasn't as easy to package into a neat little bow. It had been a long time since I'd felt like my family saw me for anything other than a shadow. There were moments, small but piercing, where it hurt more than I wanted to admit, like when Emma got promoted and my parents acted like she just saved the world. They didn't ask me what I was doing, didn't even acknowledge that I was holding my own in an entirely different world. I'd built a quiet fortune, and yet it wasn't enough. I pushed my thoughts aside, not wanting to linger too long. There was no point in wallowing in it now. They'd made their decision, and I was done playing the invisible part. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, still reeling from the call. My mind drifted back to how my family had always seen me. The one who was trying but never quite succeeding. The one who was still figuring it out, always in a quiet struggle. They didn't know the half of it. I opened my laptop and pulled up my portfolio, something that, in all these years, they hadn't even bothered to ask about. I've spent the last decade methodically building this, buying properties, developing them, flipping them. There were moments when I questioned if I was doing the right thing, but then I'd see the numbers, and I knew I was on the right track. The market had been a gamble at times, but I'd always kept my head. I bought when others hesitated, sold when others panicked. It wasn't about luck, it was about patience, persistence, and a level of calculation they couldn't have imagined. I knew exactly where I was putting my money, and I knew when the right moment to strike was. Right now, I had properties in 3 major cities: Chicago, Dallas, and Miami, each one a carefully chosen investment. In Chicago, I owned a block of luxury condos right on the lake, every unit rented at a premium price. In Dallas, I'd invested in a historic building downtown, converting it into high-end office spaces. And Miami? That was a multi-million-dollar development, a mix of commercial and residential spaces that were about to break ground. I'd built this. No one handed it to me. My family believed I was still working the same retail job I'd had in college, barely scraping by. They thought I couldn't even afford my own place. Hell, they probably thought I still lived in my apartment from 5 years ago, the one I'd kept when I moved into a much larger home I'd purchased outright. No one had ever asked. They never even noticed the way my life had changed. I clicked through my files, reviewing each project, each investment. Some of it was old, but it all had value. I'd been collecting, slowly building my way up. No flashy moments, no press conferences. I wasn't looking for recognition, but now, as I sat in the quiet of my office, looking at everything I'd created, the weight of it all hit me again. The weight of the blind spot my family had toward me. I was good at this, really good. And I didn't need their approval. The pride was there, but it was tinged with frustration. All these years of working in the shadows, of proving myself to everyone except the one group of people who should have seen me. I could have stood on a pedestal and shouted about my success, but instead, I chose to let it grow silently in the background. I'd played the part they expected, modest, humble, unsure. But now I was done. I didn't need to be recognized by them. Not anymore. But I would be damned if I let them continue to overlook me like they always had. The phone buzzed again, another call I didn't answer. It wasn't time. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet, not when I could still feel the weight of their dismissal pressing on my chest. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't need to tear down anything they'd built. But they'd never know how much I had built, how far I'd come, until I decided they did. Until I chose to make it clear, without a single word spoken, that I was no longer their afterthought. My phone buzzed again, but this time, the number on the screen wasn't unfamiliar. It was my mom. I stared at it for a long moment before I picked up, the tension rising in my chest. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual. "Sweetie, I hope you're doing okay." Her voice was laced with that tone, the one that said she was about to drop something uncomfortable on me. "I just wanted to text you real quick about the family event this weekend." I felt my stomach tighten. I already knew what this was going to be, she continued, as if the words needed to be softened, like I wasn't already painfully aware of where this was headed. "Your father and I decided it would be best not to include you in this one. We didn't want to hurt your feelings, with everything going on. So we're just sparing you the stress." I had to set the phone down for a second. Breathe. I wanted to throw it across the room, but I didn't. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let the silence fill the space between us, the words she'd just spoken hanging in the air like a thick fog. After a long pause, I picked the phone back up and, without skipping a beat, typed out my response. "Thanks for letting me know. I understand." It wasn't the truth. I didn't understand. Not in the slightest. But what good would it do to argue? They'd made up their minds, and once again, I wasn't part of their plans. As I pressed send, I thought back to all the times I'd been left out or overshadowed, times I'd swallowed my frustration and kept quiet, pretending it didn't bother me. Like the time Emma got that big job promotion, and my parents made a whole evening out of it. The way they talked about her like she was the second coming, how they couldn't stop mentioning her incredible career over dinner. I remember sitting there, barely touching my food, while they all raved about her like I wasn't even in the room. Not once did they stop to ask me about what I was working on, what I'd accomplished. No one cared. Or the time they invited everyone to that family reunion, and I showed up, only to see how quickly I was forgotten. Emma's kids ran circles around me, and my parents barely acknowledged I was even there, distracted by their perfect grandkids and perfect daughter. It always stung, but I pushed it aside. It became easier to pretend I didn't need them to notice, didn't need them to see what I was capable of. And I didn't, not really, but it still hurt. Now, as I sat there staring at the message, that old, familiar irritation bubbled up. Spare me the stress? They thought I was fragile, that I couldn't handle their exclusion. They didn't know me at all. The truth was, I was done letting them define me, done playing along with their narrative of who I was. They wanted to keep me on the outskirts, convinced that I was too small to matter? Fine, but I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. That part of me was over. I set the phone down again, my hand steady. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way I once might have been. I was resolved. The next steps would be mine to take. No more living in their shadows. No more pretending I was okay with being the invisible one. I wouldn't let them keep deciding how my story went. The moment I set the phone down after my mom's message, I knew I had to do something. I wasn't just going to sit here and take it, not this time. I opened my laptop again, this time pulling up the contract for the venue where Emma's event was booked. I'd been keeping an eye on it for months now, just in case. I clicked through the pages, skimming over the terms I'd already read. They didn't matter much until I hit the clause about cancellations. There it was, buried in fine print. The venue reserves the right to cancel any booking up to 30 days before the event, with a full refund issued to the client. I paused. A full refund? That could change everything. I hadn't expected this to be my way in, but there it was, a loophole just wide enough to slip through. I knew it was a drastic move. Hell, it was more than drastic. It was a bomb. But what else was I supposed to do? They'd pushed me to the edge, treating me like an afterthought, excluding me like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. They'd made it clear they didn't want me at this event. But maybe, just maybe, I could show them the consequences of their actions. I leaned back in my chair, running my fingers through my hair. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about taking control. I'd spent too long being the quiet one, the invisible one. I was done letting them decide when and how I'd matter. I read the cancellation clause again, each word sinking in. A refund. It didn't just mean that the family would lose the venue. It would be a clear message to them. You didn't think I'd fight for a place in your life? Fine, but I'll make you see what happens when you ignore me. I wasn't someone they could just exclude and forget. If they wanted to shut me out, I could shut them down. I picked up the phone, no hesitation, no second guessing. The decision was made. I dialed the number for the venue, listening to the ring echo in the quiet of my office. When the receptionist answered, I kept my voice steady, controlled. Hi, this is Protagonist. I'm calling about the booking under the name of Emma, last name. Yes, ma'am. How can I assist you? I'd like to cancel that booking, I said, my tone calm but firm. I'm exercising the cancellation clause in the contract, effective immediately. There was a slight pause. Oh, may I ask why? Personal reasons, I replied, not giving more than that. Please proceed with the cancellation and ensure the full refund is processed. Understood, the receptionist said, a bit flustered. I'll take care of that right away. You'll receive confirmation shortly. I hung up, sitting back in my chair, letting the weight of what I'd just done settle over me, a full refund. The wedding would be off. They'd have to find a new venue at the last minute, scrambling to save face. Maybe they wouldn't notice at first, but they'd find out soon enough. And when they did, I'd be there. I wouldn't be the one left out anymore. I had a moment to let the power of it sink in. The ball was in my court now. I wasn't just some shadow anymore. I wasn't someone they could brush aside without consequence. I just put my mark on this situation, and there was no taking it back. I felt a surge of something that felt like strength, something more solid than I'd ever had before. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. No more quietly accepting their dismissals. No more pretending that I didn't matter. This was my turn to take charge, and damn, it felt good. I sat for a few moments, letting the cool air in my office wash over me. The weight of my decision still settled deep in my chest, but there was no going back now. I had to keep going. There was more to do. I dialed the number for the wedding planner. It rang a few times before she picked up, her voice bright, almost too cheerful. Hello, this is Carla with Lux Weddings. How can I help you today? I cleared my throat. Hi, Carla. This is Protagonist. I'm calling about Emma, last name's event. Ah, yes, I've been working closely with Emma on the details. Everything is coming together wonderfully. What can I do for you? She asked, the excitement in her voice still clear. Actually, I'm calling to let you know that I've decided to cancel the venue booking. The sudden silence on the other end made my stomach tighten. It was only for a beat, but it was enough to make me wonder if she'd heard me correctly. Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I must have misunderstood. I kept my voice steady, precise. I'm canceling the booking for Emma's wedding, effective immediately. Oh, she said slowly, like the words didn't quite add up. But you're not listed as the primary contact. Emma is. Why are you calling about this? I didn't let her confusion throw me. I own the venue, I said, letting the words sit heavy in the air. There was a long pause. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. Excuse me? She asked, as if I'd just said something absurd. I own the venue, I repeated, not an ounce of hesitation in my tone. I've just exercised the cancellation clause in the contract. Please proceed with the refund process. I don't understand. How could this happen? Carla's voice wavered, clearly caught off guard. The booking was confirmed months ago. We've already put everything in motion. Deposits, confirmations, logistics. Are you sure this is what you want? I felt a small surge of power at how unsteady she was, how quickly the situation had spun out of her control. But I didn't let myself get distracted by her panic. I needed to stay calm, professional. Everything was confirmed, but I'm exercising the terms of the contract, the clause about cancellation, specifically. I've made my decision. Her voice faltered for a second before she found some kind of footing. I understand the contract, but this seems like such a big move. It feels like it's coming out of nowhere. Why are you doing this? I'm just trying to figure out how this escalated so quickly. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment breathe. That's not something I'm going to explain over the phone. Just follow through with the cancellation. Emma will get the refund. I paused for a beat. I'll be sure to send confirmation as well. If there's anything else you need, just let me know. There was a tense silence on the line, but Carla didn't argue further. Okay, I'll get the paperwork in motion. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly. But, Protagonist, I really didn't see this coming. I'm sure, I replied, the weight of my next words settling heavily between us. But it's done now. With that, I hung up, a strange mix of satisfaction and uncertainty pooling in my gut. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. I'd made my move, and the consequences would come. The fallout was inevitable. There was no way Emma wouldn't know what had happened. No way my parents wouldn't get wind of it. They'd be furious, confused, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the inevitable storm. But right now, it didn't matter. The ball was in my court. They had underestimated me, all of them, and I was done playing their game by their rules. I stood up, pacing the small space of my office, letting the adrenaline buzz through me. I was calm enough to make the right decisions. But there was a pit of unease gnawing at my insides. No matter how sure I felt in this moment, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. The truth was, I was walking a tightrope now. But the power was mine. And for the first time in years, I was calling the shots. It didn't take long for the first call to come through. The phone buzzed on my desk, the number lighting up with my father's name. I stared at it for a moment, letting it ring. I wasn't ready to talk to him. Not yet. So I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear his voice right now. Another buzz, this time from my mother. I let it ring out too. They didn't deserve an explanation. Not until I was good and ready to give one. The phone kept ringing. Another call, another voicemail, then another. Each one a little more frantic, a little more insistent. I ignored them all. I knew what was coming. The guilt, the confusion, the anger. They'd want to know why I did it, what I was thinking. They'd want to tell me I was wrong, that I'd ruined everything. And maybe, in their eyes, I had. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I had control now, not them. The clock ticked on, and I focused on the work in front of me, details of a new project, another opportunity to build. This was what I'd been doing all along, while they were busy living in their little world of perfect expectations. It was almost funny, in a way. I'd spent years pretending to care about their approval, doing everything they wanted me to do. But now, the roles had reversed. They were scrambling, trying to figure out what I had done, while I calmly sat in my office, working on my empire. But then, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from my father. His voice was tight, frustrated, barely holding it together. Protagonist, what the hell is going on? We're hearing about the cancellation from the venue. You've got to explain yourself. We don't know what you're thinking, but you've got to fix this. Call me, now. I pressed my lips together, staring at the screen. His tone was familiar. Rising frustration, a demand for answers. I'd heard it so many times before, but this time, it didn't bother me the way it once did. I wasn't afraid of his anger anymore. I didn't need to fix it. I played the voicemail again, just to feel the weight of his words. Maybe it was childish, but I wanted to savor the feeling of his confusion. The power was mine now, not his. I didn't call back, not yet. Instead, I turned back to my laptop, continuing with my work as if nothing had changed. And honestly, nothing had. They might be rattled, but I wasn't. I didn't need to explain myself. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Emma. The voicemail picked up, and I could practically hear her panic, her voice sharp and trembling as she left her message. What the hell did you do? Why did you cancel the venue? What's wrong with you? Call me right now. I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow breath. Her words were sharp, but they didn't cut like they once might have. I could feel the sting of her anger, sure, but I wasn't moved by it. I was done being the one who always had to apologize, the one who had to explain myself in order to make them happy. My phone buzzed one more time, but I didn't even look at the screen. I wasn't going to pick it up. Not yet. Not until I was ready to face whatever this was going to turn into. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was enjoying the silence, the control, the fact that for once, I wasn't on the outside, waiting for them to notice me. They had to come to me now. I picked up my coffee and took a sip, letting the hot liquid burn my throat just enough to remind me of what I was doing. The decisions I had made had consequences that would eventually land on their doorstep. But for now, I could sit in this space, in this quiet power, and let them come to terms with their own frustration. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about being seen. It was about making them face what they had ignored for so long. So I let the phone keep buzzing, and I let the silence stretch on, because I wasn't the one who needed to apologize this time. I didn't hear the knock at first, lost in my thoughts and the hum of my office. But when the door opened, I knew exactly who it was before I even looked up. Mom and Dad stood in the doorway, both looking uncomfortable and out of place. I didn't move, didn't greet them. They could wait. What is this, protagonist? Dad's voice cut through the air, demanding an answer even before I'd given him a chance to speak. I didn't speak at first. I just watched them, my gaze cool, taking in the way they both shifted uncomfortably, the way Mom avoided eye contact. It wasn't their first time walking into a situation they didn't control, but it was the first time it was my situation. Sit down, I finally said, motioning to the chairs across from my desk. I wasn't giving them the courtesy of standing, not anymore. They sat, Dad first, and then Mom, both of them quiet as if waiting for me to speak. The air between us was thick with tension, the kind of tension that had been building for years. Why didn't you tell us about your success? Mom asked finally, her voice soft but desperate. We had no idea. Why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you trust us? I almost laughed. Almost. But I kept it together. You want to know why I didn't come to you? I said, leaning forward slightly. Because I wasn't the one you cared about. You've always made it clear who you cared about. You've made it clear where I stand in this family. They looked stunned, as if I'd just slapped them. But they couldn't be surprised. Not really. Dad finally cleared his throat, his frustration evident. That's not fair. We've always supported you. Just because we didn't know about your investments doesn't mean we didn't care. You didn't care, I interrupted. You never did. When was the last time you asked me what I was doing? When was the last time you showed any interest in what I was building? You never asked. It was always about Emma, always about her perfect life, her perfect career. Mom opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off again. I didn't need your praise. I didn't need you to treat me like I was less than because I wasn't following your script. But damn it, I deserve to be seen. I deserve to be recognized. The silence in the room stretched on. I could see it on their faces now, the guilt, the confusion, the realization that I wasn't the same person I had been. that I wasn't going to let them control the narrative anymore. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice more measured but still laced with disbelief. So, you do this as a response? You ruin Emma's wedding? You put all this pressure on us, and you're telling us you're doing it because you weren't seen? He shook his head, frustrated. You can't just throw everything away like that, protagonist. We're family. We should have been included. We should have known. Should have known, I said, my voice low but firm. You should have known, but you didn't care to look. You didn't even ask, and that's the problem. You ignored me for years, and now you're acting like I'm the one who's wrong for finally standing up for myself? Their expressions twisted, both of them unsure how to respond to the truth, how to respond to the mirror I'd held up to their behavior. I'm done, I said, my voice quiet but steady. Done letting you make the rules. Done letting you dictate what I'm supposed to be. I'm not your afterthought anymore, and I'm not asking for your approval. I'm not even asking for an apology from you. Unless you want me to really show you what it feels like to be ignored. They were silent for a moment, exchanging a look. Mom's face softened, but her next words came out carefully, like she was choosing them carefully. I didn't mean for you to feel that way. We didn't see what we were doing, how we made you feel invisible. But you could have come to us. You could have shared this. We would have helped. You would have helped? I scoffed, my anger rising again. When? When Emma was getting all the attention and I was left in the background? When you were too busy with her to notice me? Dad shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable now. It wasn't intentional. We never meant to hurt you, protagonist. I regret how we've acted, but this is not the way to fix things. You've made it worse. I shook my head. Number, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything's fine, that you can just apologize and make it go away. You don't get to do that. Not now. Not after all these years. There was another long pause. Then Dad let out a heavy sigh. Then what do you want from us? I want an apology, I said, leaning in just slightly. From you. From Emma. For years of being ignored. For being treated like I was less than. I want to be seen, and I want that recognition. I want it from both of you, and I want you to know that I'm not backing down this time. They both fell silent, unsure what to do next. But I was done waiting. This was it. The truth was out, and I wasn't walking back from it. I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore, and I was done being invisible. I wasn't sure what I expected after the confrontation with my parents, but the knock on my office door caught me off guard. I looked up from the contract I was reviewing, the click of my heels echoing through the hallway outside. When I opened the door, there stood Emma. Her expression was a mix of guilt and uncertainty. She hadn't been the one to show up at my office before, not to face me after all that had happened. She stepped inside without a word, her eyes immediately lowering to the floor as if she was trying to avoid mine. Can we talk? She asked quietly, her voice smaller than usual. I didn't answer right away. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. She looked different, more vulnerable, stripped of the confident mask she usually wore. Yeah, we can talk, I said, keeping my tone even. Sit down. She did, but she didn't meet my eyes. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her like this. She looked human. And for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. I've been thinking about everything, Emma began, her voice shaky, and I realized I've been a terrible sister. I've been blind to everything you've been doing. I thought you were failing, that you couldn't handle your life. I was wrong. I see that now. I didn't interrupt her, just let her words hang in the air. This wasn't what I'd expected. I wanted her to admit she'd overlooked me, but I didn't expect her to come to me like this, so raw. I treated you like you were nothing, she continued, her voice breaking. I always put myself on a pedestal and never considered how that affected you. I can't undo that, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't know how to respond at first. For so long, I'd longed for her to see me, to really see me, and now she was here, apologizing. But it wasn't enough to fix everything. Do you really get it? I asked, leaning forward. Do you understand what you did? How you always treated me like I was second best? Like I wasn't worth your time unless it fit your picture of what I should be? She nodded, wiping her eyes. I do. I can't take it back, but I promise I'll do better. Please, let me make this right. I sat back in my chair, crossing my arms. It's a start. But if you think everything is fine now, you're wrong. I'm not going to just fall back into the role you want me to play, Emma. Things have changed. She swallowed, looking at me with wide eyes. Of course, I know that. But Is there any way I can still have you at my wedding? I didn't hesitate. Yes, but there's one condition. At the wedding, in front of everyone, I want you to say it. I want you to publicly acknowledge everything. How you've overlooked me, how you've treated me. I'm not going to be sidelined again. Not by you, not by anyone. Her face softened, and I could see the weight of it sink in. She wasn't just apologizing to make things better. She was realizing the full scope of her actions. I promise I'll do it. I'll say it. I nodded, a small sense of satisfaction settling in. That's all I'm asking. The wedding is still on. But it's a new beginning. For both of us. I won't let you push me aside again. I won't let anyone. Emma looked like she was about to say something, but she just nodded instead. I could see the relief in her eyes, the acknowledgement that she had a chance to make things right. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. I'll see you at the wedding. But things have changed, Emma. I won't be invisible anymore. She stood too, slowly, and for the first time in years, we hugged. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't everything. But it was enough for now. We both knew that this wasn't just about a wedding, it was about me finally getting the recognition I deserved. The kind I'd spent my whole life waiting for.